Hi, this is Harold Lanier with Lanier Bee Barn. I wanted to go over a quick video today to show you guys a little bit about honey extraction and also with the tools that we have available for rent. So right now we're renting this whole outfit for $40 a day plus a $100 deposit. We've got everything that you need for extraction except the buckets and a couple small things you'll have around the house. Now if you're married or expect to stay married, I'd suggest that you work on trying to not be terribly messy. So there's a couple things you can do. One is you can use a contractor bag. Just take a large trash bag, set it down on the floor, and then you can stack all your supers up. But I suggest you try to create some type of a workstation so you have a workflow, so that it goes from one thing to the other to the other. You're going to need whatever supers that you have with your honey in them, your frames, and then you're going to need one empty super or another container that you can put them in after we spin them in the extractor. Okay. So another wonderful thing to always have on hand is a bucket of water, because you're going to get sticky. I mean, I don't care what you do, but if all you need to do is just dip your fingers in the water and have a couple paper towels handy, you will find that that's going to save you a lot of headache. If you don't have a contractor bag or whatever, another option, actually is a really good option. This is some runner paper, I think, that I get from Home Depot. And you can take that, roll that out on the floor, and then use some blue painter's tape, or in this case I have some frog tape. The stuff that doesn't stick very well, it will come back up very easily when you're done. This paper right here, guys, is probably one of the best things you can get, because even if you had a linoleum floor, if you step on a drop of honey, every step you take around that room is going to tick, 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 and track it just everywhere. Okay, so this right here will absorb it. So this is a real good option to put down. The kit is going to come with a scratching tool, with a knife, with this tub system. The tub's got a honey gate on it and a lid and so forth. Also, we'll have an extractor and a strainer set. So what you're going to need to provide is your buckets for whatever you want to store your stuff in. In addition to that, though, I sell bottling supplies. So I have nice plastic bottles. This is a 1 pound bottle, a 2 pound bottle, and I love the flip caps because they're a lot less messy than trying to deal with a screw-on jar lid, that type of thing. We also have some real small, nice little sample type things you can give to friends or family or whatever. Now when you get your, bring the tub, the bar is going to be down in the bottom, so you'll just need to put the bar in place. It just presses down in here, and then you're going to just screw these nuts on. They don't have to be tight. It's just going to keep it basically from falling off when you're cutting the comb. So on my honey supers, a nice tip that I learned years ago that helps a lot is, in this case, you're looking at an 8-frame box, and in a honey super for an 8-frame box, I only put 7 frames. I actually space them out a little bit, so they'll be spaced all the way across, about like so. That will encourage the bees to draw those combs out wider, so that when we get ready to cut the cappings off, they come off a whole lot easier. But in every case, they don't get all the cells, and that's when we're going to use the capping scratcher. Okay. So now that we have our kind of our workflow set up and we're ready to go, it's really a simple process. So we'll start with our frame. Put it up here. Now what I like to do is start at the top, and I'll take a little bit of comb off here. All right. Don't worry if you cut some of the wood, because that's going to be caught by the strainer, okay, when it goes through. Don't worry about that. So then once I have a place to start, then I'll start cutting downward. Okay. And I'm running the knife blade along the edges of the wood, using that as a guide. Notice though, as I went down this piece, there's a lot of comb here that it did not touch. We'll get back to that in just a second. So I always go around to the other side, do that one. Now you want to let the knife do the work, okay? So what you don't want to do is just press it and crush it down. I'm really not putting much downward pressure on it. I'm sawing it, okay? But also notice I've tilted it away from the honey a little bit. I don't want it flat because then it's going to stick. So I have it tilted slightly. I also have the comb tilted so that as I shear off the cappings, it just naturally is going to fall in the tub, okay? All right, so now, all right, we've got, this side is pretty well done, except with the exception of just a little bit right there. So I'll set the knife down, we'll get our capping scratcher. Now some people will scratch it like so. You got to pierce these little cappings because when you put it in the extractor, it's not going to extract. They'll just sit there, they'll stay under the capping. If you have just a little bit, I just scratch them like so, it's not a big deal. But on the other side, we have quite a lot. If you scratch, the more you scratch of this, you're going to create tiny little wax particles that it's going to clog up your sieve, and you'll just have to, clean it out more often. So what I like to do instead is I'm picking the cappings off of here, just plucking them, taking this capping scratcher and just taking off the top, right? And then I can put them in here, and they're not going to be going through the sieve, okay? All right, so now we've got this one ready to go. With this big tub, I've got room to set it aside in there and do a few more. Now the extractor is only a 2-frame extractor, and so we can get 2 frames, get them running in the extractor, and then we can come back and start cutting some more and stack those up in the tub here. So let's go ahead and get this one cut. And again, you see me sawing this. With this serrated blade, it makes easy work of it. I'm not pressing down. And if you do that, you're going to crush the comb, to crush all those cells. And really, it's going to be harder then for the bees to try and fix that later. All right? So, do our back side. See, this one's drawn out really well. Very nice. Now, one thing I also want to point out is that not all of this is capped. So let's talk about that for just a moment. You want your comb, if it's fully capped, the bees have dried it out, and we're sure that that is not going to ferment, okay? But at some point, some of the open cells, we don't know if those are dry enough yet. So there's 3 major ways that I use to try and determine if things are good. Number 1, if we're about 80% of this frame is capped, then we're good to go. Because even if that uncapped part is not quite ready, the moisture will equalize as we uncap it. The second way we can do that is what's called an old-timers test. And essentially, you would take that frame and shake it over a clean part of the table, shake it really hard. If nothing drips out, then it's good to go. And the third way would be to use a refractometer, a little small device, looks kind of like a small telescope, and I sell those here in my store. Now, let's finish this one up. All right. So let's see, we got that one looking pretty good. There's a little bit of comb on this side that just needs to be opened up. Okay. Now let's move over to the extractor and we'll take a look and see how we run the extractor. All right, I want to show you a little bit more about this extracting, the uncapping tank. This one's made up with two parts, and inside here we have a grate that catches all those wax cappings that we just cut off. And so it will drip through there and into the bottom, in which we also have a honey gate that we can then later open up and get all that honey out. You'll be surprised how much honey actually goes into here when you're uncapping. So there's a bunch of honey to be had down there. Now, at this height of this work table, I've got these two tubs in this configuration, but we can turn it around like so. So if you had it on a lower stand of some type, this could give you a more easily accessible surface. Now, and with this table, I'm not going to be able to cut way up here because it's going to be too high, so that's why I had it lower. Another advantage to this is that in this configuration, we could have a whole lot more honey in here before we had to drain it. Okay, so whatever works for you, you'll figure it out. All right, now that we've got this in here, we're going to transfer these frames over into the extractor. And another little tip is that right now all this honey has been dripping downward. It's a good idea to turn your frame this way, so as you're transferring it from one side to the other, you're not dripping everywhere. Okay, so this is a tangential extractor, meaning the frames are at a tangent to the center line. So when we put these in, it's only going to spin the honey out of one side at a time. We'll have to spin one side, stop the extractor, turn the frame around, and then spin the other side out. So we'll close our door to be sure there's no fingers and stuff in here. Always be sure that this is switched to the off position before you start. That way, if the dial is not turned, if the dial happens to be turned way up and you hit on, you're not going to want that because the extractor is going to run across the room. So with the dial turned down to 0, we can turn it on and then slowly turn it on until it gets to a point where we see a little bit of vibration. So the extractor is going to be spinning this out against the sides of the tub. We'll open our honey gate here. Then as the honey builds up in the bottom, it's going to flow out and come through our sieves right here. So a couple pro tips. When you get ready to turn this on, be sure you open this. If you do not open this, it's going to fill up with honey and you're going to have whipped honey in there, and I don't think that's what you want. Second pro tip is to keep watch on this bucket. This is a small bucket right here, but we could put this in a 5-gallon bucket, which is what I normally do. But when you do that, you got to be sure your bucket doesn't run over, or that if it clogs up here too much with wax cappings, then it overflows the sieve on either side. So now we've got this one running a good bit. There'll be some honey collect here in just a little while, and then it'll start coming out the gate. Okay, now that we've let it spin for a long time on one side, we can go ahead and stop it. Be careful to open the gate. I only open this panel whenever it's done spinning. So then we'll take our frames, which I've already done for the sake of time, and you would flip them around this way and then spin them yet again. Okay. So at this point we've already spun both sides, and we want to be sure that the honey is going to flow here. So when we do this, we want to be certain that our bucket is up under here. We want to also be sure that it hasn't filled up with a lot of comb and a lot of wax pieces. So you can scrape this out, make sure that way it'll flow a lot better. But at this point, we've got a little bit of honey in there to extract it. We only had the 2 frames, so there won't be a lot. But if there's a lot more, you just want to watch it, make sure this doesn't spill over the sides, and that your bucket also doesn't fill up and run over. So what we have then is a lot of honey that's in the bottom of the tank. This one is just right to here. Once that quits flowing like it is, you can kind of tilt the extractor forward. And then I've got a tool. This is a Pampered Chef kind of rubber spatula thing that's awesome for what we're doing here. So I can use it with the flat side to scrape this stuff. I can also use it with the flat side to scrape the honey out of the bottom, and it coax it out and get it out in there. So what I'll do is I'll let this run for a while, and then I'm going to tilt it forward, and that way it'll get as much as it can on its own out of the bottom. So again, just keep an eye on the sieve down there. Don't let it overflow. Now, when that's all done, remember that we have a lot of honey still in our uncapping tank. So in here right now, there's at least that much honey. That's several pounds of honey. So we're going to do the same thing. We'll move the bucket up under here, raise this one up, and then let that run through the sieve. I typically let my honey sit for probably at least 48 hours before I bottle it, because at that point the any of the air bubbles, and if there happens to be a stray piece of wax or something, it'll come up and float to the top. Now I'm going to give you a pro tip here that is, it's just worth the whole money right here, and that is, a lot of times if you got this stuff on the top, you think it's might be debris, but it isn't. It's just air bubbles, tiny air bubbles. The honey is so viscous, those bubbles, when they rise to the top, they can't burst. So it looks like foam, which you can eat it. It doesn't taste any different because it's all just pure honey. However, what you can do is take a piece of saran wrap, and you tear it off about that big, fold it up, and I drop it down in the middle, and I let it out gently, and then I pat it all the way around on the top. Then you can take a corner and just peel that back, and just about every bit of that foam will come right off. So that's a good tip as far as getting the foam off the top of your bucket. Now, as far as cleanup goes, you only need warm water to clean up. Now, I went into my basement and tapped into my hot water system, and so I can run a hose of hot water to the outside. Hot water will definitely take all this honey right off of these things, and it'll take a good bit of the wax too. You may have to take a fingernail or something and get some of the wax off, but for the most part, just your hot water is all you need. So you can clean up all these tools, clean up this interior. Now, if you have any wax cappings, they will dry out very quickly. They'll drip through here, and so from here, I take these, I use these, so you can melt them down. I use a solar wax melter. You can melt them down and use it to make candles or lip balms or body lotions, anything that you can use with wax. And the wax cappings are some of the best wax that you can get. It isn't old comb, it's all brand new stuff for this year. So that's some really good stuff you want to hang on to. So at any rate, I hope this video helps. If you have any questions or whatever, you can certainly leave comments down below, or actually I prefer you to email me. That way I can make a list of comments if people have a lot of similar stuff, if you have questions or whatever. But again, Lanier Bee Barn, we sell all kind of beekeeping supplies, everything that you need for beekeeping. We sell bees, we sell honey, we do classes. At this point in time, today is July 11th, I have 2 more classes for this year coming up on July 24 and one in August. I don't remember its date. But you can contact us and we can hook you up with those classes. So if you have any questions, just give us a call or send us an email, harold@lanierbeebarn.com. Thanks.